Hello and welcome to tonight's webinar, Supercharge Your Personal Brand. I'm Hock Lai, a volunteer for Asian Institute of Mentoring, or AIM for short, and I'm your chair for this evening. I want to welcome you to one of the series of the weekly webinars provided by AIM as part of our United Against COVID-19 program, or UNACOV for short, which will cover three main pillars. Tonight's topic is under the career resilient, and we have two other pillars known as the personal well-being and crisis management for small business. So just a few housekeeping rules before we start. You will be on listening mode only, and the webinar will be recorded, and we will send the link to you at the end of the webinar. There is a Q&A function, so please add your question for the speaker and also vote on the question. You can start voting on the question anytime from now. The speaker might be taking some question along tonight's session. There's also a chat function where you can add comments or if you need any help. Please ensure that you select all panelists and attendees in the to field if you would like to see your comments. Too many people undervalue what they are not, overvalue what they are not, and undervalue what they are. And that's why personal branding is so important, to remind people why you are special. I'm delighted to introduce to you our speaker for this evening, Sam Neo. He's the founder of two startups, People Mentality Inc. and Story of Asia. He's trusted and has worked with major organizations like Singtel, Under Armour, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, ING Bank, and more. He is also a millennial HR thought leader and has been invited to share on TV, radio, and many publications. This evening, Sam will be having a chat with Lawrence Young, one of AIM's co-founder and also the co-founder of HRFC. Lawrence called himself a chief gardener, so he spent most of his time planting seeds, creating and nurturing communities, always ready to give without expectation. Having worked for major brands like Nike, Walt Disney, and Asia Brewery in HR, he understands the importance of branding. So it gives me great pleasure to hand you over to Sam and Lawrence, who will be talking about personal branding and how you can use it to stand out in the crowd and be noticed by a prospective employer or customer. So over to you, Sam and Lawrence.
Thanks, Hock Lai.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. A very warm welcome to everyone for being here with us this evening for this interesting discussion. So, you know, Sam threatened me, right? He said, Lawrence, if you don't wear my People Mentality t-shirt, right, I will not speak. So you're got to speak all the time. So I'm wearing my People Mentality t-shirt here. So he's going to speak the whole evening now. Anyway, just a recap of what Hock Lai talked about. We have a chat box and we have a Q&A box as well. So the chat box is for you all to sort of talk amongst yourselves and actually ask, sort of give comments. But at the same point in time, don't forget the Q&A as well, because what Sam is going to talk about today is actually very important for you as an individual, and also as a company executive, and also as a business owner. Because I never believed in it when I was very young. But what has happened is, over the period of time that I've been with Sam, we sort of both realized that it is a very critical success factor if you want to be effective out there in the marketplace now, especially in the social media space. So we welcome all the Q&As. So, and what I'll do is, we'll not leave the Q&A to the end. What we'll do is I will interject when I need to, if I find good questions coming out from the audience today. And then I will interject and I'll ask Sam whether he would like to answer during the time when he's talking about the topic. I hope that's okay with all of you all. So without holding you all back, this show belongs actually to Sam. I've known Sam for over 3 years now, and he has traveled a long way, truly. He's actually amazed a lot of people, but it's a lot to do with the passion and the persistence and the commitment that he has in trying to build something that he's always dreamt about. So let me dive into today's webinar. Allow me to introduce Sam, who is also not just a millennial CEO, but also a proud father of a son, Will. And Sam, I'll pass it over to you now. Would you like to talk a little bit about yourself and what you have been up to this last couple of years?
So thanks Lawrence, and I guess thanks Hawk Life for introduction as well. Thanks AIM for inviting me to this program itself. For those who don't know me, Sam over here. I started my corporate background in HR. I was in Keppel, in Changi Airport Group. I'm doing various roles: HR business partner, talent management, so on and so forth. A typical, HR professional. Very traditional, just following the rules, climbing corporate ladder, so on and so forth. I think what really changed was then, about 8 months before I decided to exit the corporate world itself, when I was 29. So in case, just in case you guys wonder how old am I, also about 4 years ago, I was 29. I was having this millennial quarter life crisis, a bit older, but back then, quarter life crisis of sort. I was thinking, hey, why am I so comfortable? What's wrong with myself? Getting good pay, good company, stable job back then. So I started questioning, what am I really looking for? So that's where I started going out to social media, going out to local HR communities. And in fact, that's how I met Lawrence, where I started sharing some articles, some content. It kind of caught his attention. So when I first met him, I remember this. We were at Suntec Convention Center. So I think Roberta was there as well. So first thing Lawrence said, hey, you're so young. The things that you share, you sound like an old man. So I didn't expect you to be this young in the start. I remember that. So it's quite funny. So that's how we started our relationship. And that's where I think we also started a mentorship relationship. It was informal at first and it became a bit more formal through the HRFC mentoring program. So since then I realized something, right? That, what I really wanted for myself wasn't just like the corporate title, wasn't just the big bucks. Of course, all these are really nice, right? But what I wanted was then I wanted to leave a legacy for not only myself, but for the HR profession that I felt, there was so much more potential to actually develop. It really pained me to see that people think HR as a second tier function, a support function, and sometimes even a dumping ground where, if comms you cannot make it, ops you cannot make it, just go HR, for example. So that was how I got started on my entrepreneurship journey. And in fact, because of that, I started paying more attention in terms of, personal branding. For the very fact I felt that it was really important, especially from a transition of a corporate employee to an entrepreneur. In fact, personal brand, regardless of what you do, how young, how old you are, to me is something important. And if for those who are not exactly familiar with personal brand, essentially, right, it's reputation. What are you known for? What do people say and think about you when you're not in the room, when you're not around, right? So you want to build a strong personal brand, a strong reputation, so that people trust you, people say good things about you, and it's easy for people to recognize what you stand for, and they can look for you in very focused, very easy manner. So in short, hopefully that introduces me and sets the context of the discussion today. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Let's start deep diving and let me start the ball rolling, right?
Yep.
So, Sam, you spoke a little bit about personal branding already in your little intro, but using your personal experiences and learnings from over the 2 years that you've been inside your own entrepreneurship journey, right? Maybe you could share with us, what does personal branding actually mean to you from the three perspectives, right? I'd like to share. One is the individual, one is your business, and one is the organization. I think it'd be very interesting if we can actually cut it down a little bit down here, go deep a little bit, for you to share with us your experiences and the expertise that you think might be important in this area. Sam, what do you think?
Let me just clarify, right? So when you say business, you're referring to my business, organizations,
Yes,
meaning clients I'm working with, is it?
yes, and also your own business, your own organization, because you have people mentality. You also have stories of Asia, and you look after people inside there as well.
Hmm.
So the way the employees actually see you in terms of who you are, and also your clients, how they
Hmm.
see you and how they actually sort of imagine who you are. Those are personal branding issue, sort of initiatives, isn't it? Okay.
Okay, maybe I'll start off more from individual first because that's where personal, right? Personal brand starts from there, I
Yes.
would say. So I think essentially like what I briefly alluded to, personal brand is like your reputation. You want people to associate you, they want to think about you in terms of that, that term or that brand itself. So for example, when people think of Sam, they probably think of the HR guy, the guy who builds community, the guy who, tells stories, for example. That is probably my brand out in the market in that sense, right? So I think when it comes to individual, you need to think of, what do you want to be known for? What is the value you're bringing on the table? Because that affects, how people see you. And the brand itself is not just something on social media. I think most people have the misconception that personal brand is just social media. But what I constantly emphasize is that regardless individual or, for organizations, businesses itself, is both online and offline, right? So meaning, right? Let me share this. So for example, when we talk about brand, for example, I can share, let's say, hey, I'm such a giving person, I'm always so nice, so friendly, that's the persona that I built in terms of my personal brand online. But what if you met me in person and you realize, wow, Sam is such a stuck-up person. Sam doesn't even smile. Sam is so cold. That is a very negative personal brand you're adding to yourself, because what you show online, right, is like an expectation of sort, right? It's like a something you share with a lot of people. But when you connect with people, essentially it's offline, whether it's in person, through a call or whatever it is. That's where that reality happens, and you want that reality and expectation to meet as much as possible. That's where the term authenticity comes into play, I would say, essentially. So from a personal point of view, I would say, you want to be known for something niche in that sense, so that, when it comes to, let's say, a business need, when it comes to employment, when it comes to referring to somebody, right, you are top of mind. Essentially, when you build a brand, you want to be top of mind. And through different channels, different mediums, different ways of doing it, you want to constantly reinforce that brand. And of course, online wise, typically it's about content creation to reinforce what your brand stands for, so that you have that value in the market itself, right? So for example, if you think of mentorship, you might think of AIM, for instance. That's the brand that is building, right? So that leads us to the next point in terms of business and organizations. Business point of view wise, I would say, typically, do people necessarily only buy a product or service because your product or service is the best? I mean, sometimes yes, but most of the time, why people decide to work with you, right, is because they trust your brand. And it always starts from an individual, I would say, right? Whether they trust, for example, myself, let's say they come to me, it may not be because my product is the cheapest. It may not be because my service is the best, for example, but because first and foremost, they trust Sam as a person, right? From the personal brand side to say, hey, because Sam is working and leading this organization, that's where I have more trust in the organization itself, because Sam is associated with organization. That's why, right, increasingly you realize in the market, something they're doing quite often. People talk about brand advocates, brand ambassadors. It's a relatively new concept in some corporations itself, where they're working with employees, for instance, to leverage on their personal brand to showcase what the company brand is all about. Because we all know, right? Typically, when you hear things from a corporate level, it sounds a bit it sounds too corporate. It sounds a bit fluffy, right? So sometimes people question whether it's true or not. But imagine this: if employees are the one actually saying, "Hey, I enjoy working for the company," employees are saying that this is actually a place that develops people. I have my story to share through a personal brand, personal story. Imagine how much more powerful is that. And if all employees or a lot of employees come together using individual personal brands to build up that organizational brand, that is where the true power of the brand becomes, really shines in that sense. So that's more from an organization point of view as well as a business point of view. Yeah.
So Sam, from your perspective, right? So you talk about social media, so that would be the hardware, right? Where you actually do your personal branding. But there's also the elements of the soft side that now you're spending a lot of time on, because I realized that from what you just said just now, the little time that you said all this, that the behavior that you have, maybe even the way you dress,
Yep.
the tonality of your the way you actually talk to people, and these are all the little things that actually matter in personal branding. So it's not just hardware, but it's also the software as well, the competency of who you are, how you present yourself, and how you dress even. Is that right?
Yes. So essentially, how I usually look at this, right, is that when you build a brand, you're building across different touch points, right? So I briefly mentioned that these touch points are both online, offline. So social media is typically one of the main channels that people think of in particular. I mean, in particular now, right, where we can go out, where it's free typically if you spend time creating content for people to know who you are. And I think why people like social media so much in particular for brand building is because the outreach is so much wider, right? It transcends boundaries in terms of geographical as well as language and stuff like that at times. So I think that's one big area that people focus on. But beyond that, like you said, how you carry yourself, your dressing, the way you treat, a cleaner versus a CEO, for example, right? That's a common example that people talk about, speaks volume of you, and that adds up to your brand because people want a few things when it comes to branding. Consistency is one, right? So the last thing I want is, okay, I see you so like a nice guy on social media, but in person or when I hear from somebody else, people often say, hey, be wary of Sam. Sam is not a nice guy. Sam has hidden agenda and stuff like that. That's not what you want, and that creates a lot of shadow of doubt in people's minds. So that consistency across different touch points that Lawrence briefly spoke about, like I spoke about, is very important, I must say, when it comes to brand building.
So maybe I'll make you even dive deeper here, right? Because I think it's interesting that everybody needs to understand the importance of personal branding. So if you were to say from the time that you started, right, to the time now, right, what would a typical personal branding process look like? Let's say in social media, for example. Let's take your strength, right? Because I think LinkedIn is a very powerful tool that you use a lot
Yep.
on for your branding. So I just think it might be important for us to understand how do you do a typical branding process for yourself from the time you started right up to now. What were the touch points, as you put it, right, that you would have right in place, right? That's important for everybody to go through on a journey.
Hmm. I think it all starts from, I think two things that I consider starting off from. One is then from a very value giving perspective. What is the constant value I'm trying to give to the market, to the community itself? Second thing is then I started off by trying to find and search what is the Sam Neill brand, right? Because at the very beginning, I'm just a HR guy, but nothing really stands out, right? I mean, like, there's so many HR people out there. I think in Singapore alone, there's 40,000 or so easily, right? So it started from that searching part of it. So I think that's where mentorship, that's where, constant sharing itself helped me reinforce or rediscover what is really important to myself, what am I strong at, what am I truly passionate about. I think it took a while, but with that constant sharing and discovering itself, I think that's what helped me at the very beginning. And of course, that leads me to the next point in terms of value delivery, right? How you build a strong brand that sustains, that creates followership, or in a way, they call it fandom, right? People, you have fans in a way. People really root for you no matter what. It's really the value that you give, right? Why do people follow you? Why do people look up to you in some sense? Because you have something to share with them. You're something that inspired them. You're something that they can take away, that they can use essentially, right? So I think importantly, regardless how young, how old, which industry you are, I think you can start from this 2 points. First and foremost, asking yourself, looking inward, right? What do you really want to stand for? What are you passionate about? What can you give? And next, constantly have the mindset that personal brand building, right? It's like a relationship. No one wants to work with a taker, where constantly when I'm with you, you're trying to take something away from me, right? But rather they enjoy working with people who are constantly giving them something. Whether it's more or less, you're giving something, people enjoy that kind of relationship. So I think that's where typically a good personal brand journey starts from, searching within yourself, understanding what you stand for, and the giving part. Once you have these two things, I think along the way is about, constantly building up that narrative, right? So for example, my brand at this moment, I focus a lot on the HR as well as employer branding part. So content that I create typically revolves around there. Talks that I give, for example, people that I engage when I do coaching, I try to coach around this area so that, it builds up to the overall narrative that Sam is known for the HR employer branding space, right? So that's something that's important, where you build up a narrative as well. And why do so many people fail in terms of personal branding? Because first and foremost, they give up before any success is seen. I think it's important to recognize that personal branding can be achieved by everybody, but it's perhaps not for everybody. Why do I say that? Because most people think that if I have 3 good posts on social media, for example, it goes viral, and then, okay, that's my personal brand, right? But it doesn't happen that way. Behind the scenes, there's so much work that you need to do. Constant doing research, you're building relationship with people, you're doing, offline coaching, offline mentoring, you're actually giving people certain value without, shouting out in the market, for example. All this adds up. And it's not just about content that you create. I think that's something that Lawrence also mentioned, is the touch points, the hardware and software. It's not just about what you see online, basically. So I think these are some of the simple things you can get started or think of from building a personal brand journey point of view itself. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I can so relate to that sort of the points that you raised, right, Sam.
Mm,
But what I'm really keen about, right, is you mentioned mentoring quite a few times just now.
mm,
So how has mentoring impacted you in your personal branding? Because mentoring for me, I'm a bit biased about mentoring because
mm.
I totally believe in it, right? But I feel that it's a very strong point when it comes to personal branding because mentoring is like asking a support pillar to come along and help you build your whatever you want to build, right? So how has mentoring played a part and impacted the personal branding that you have gone through? Might be the question I'd like to ask
Okay.
to you to
I
share.
think that's a good question. Mentoring for me actually helped on multiple fronts, right? First and foremost, like I said, to build a personal brand, you need clarity. I think that's where first and foremost a mentor can help you to some extent, right? Where you constantly bounce off, because I think typically when you are lost or when you're still relatively young, like myself back then, right? Sometimes you just work for the sake of working, you just do things, but you're not very clear where you want to go to or what can you look up to in some sense. So hence I think the mentor actually helped me. I mean, Lawrence, case in point, was one of them who helped me get that kind of clarity. And also, I think from a personal brand point of view, it's not just about clarity and value that I mentioned. One more thing is then the conviction, right, which comes from confidence. I remember my conversation with Lawrence back then when I was still searching for that confidence itself. I know he shared with me something that's very important to me. He said, you need to have this self-trust. This self-trust is really important. Without self-trust, right, how can you expect your employer or your clients to even trust you in the first place? I think that's where once you have the trust in your brand, the conviction in what you're doing, believing that it's bigger than yourself, that's where you become very confident advocating, and that's where that ripple effect happens, I would say. Another part in terms of mentoring, helping personal brand is then, of course, sometimes a mentor, right, has a much stronger brand than yourself, because typically I would say a mentor they look up to usually is more established in the market, right? So you can also work with your mentor to leverage on his brand or her brand to help you grow your brand. I mean, that's something that I've seen help me in a way as well at the very beginning, because at the very beginning, if you're still young or still unknown in the market, you know, um, you want to establish that credibility. Credibility comes not just from self-trust, but also from the association, right? People want to know that you're associated with people who have good reputation as well, or good personal brand as well. And hence back to my point just now where I said, why do companies want to work with, employees, or why do they want to work with renowned consultants? Let's say like myself, why do companies want to work with me on branding related assignments? Because I have a relatively positive personal brand, and working with me gives them that added value in some sense, as compared to
Mm,
some who might be, they have good outreach on social media, but the brand doesn't resonate with certain corporations. So I think
mm.
that's where when think of the association itself, it makes a lot of difference to add to that credibility, that positioning that helps you, reach out to people that resonate with that brand itself. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that one really allowed me to actually comment on a
Mm,
point that I wanted to raise, right? So, you know, you talk about uh, moving in with other organizations, connecting and all that, right? So how important is collaboration and partnership in the personal branding space?
mm,
Might be the question I like to ask because I'm sure you have some ideas there because I see a lot of collaboration and partnerships that you are currently going into. And I think there's a strategy that you're playing there. For example, the building of Stories of Asia.
mm,
Although I initially said, you know, whether you're you're smart to actually digress, but you went ahead anyway after thinking through it yourself,
mm.
and obviously it's very very successful now. So, but the question I like to ask is collaboration and partnership. How important it is to personal branding? Maybe you want to help people
Sure.
understand.
So that's a very important question as well, actually. So many might think that personal brand is just building towards yourself, right? I mean, to some extent, it's true because of the term personal brand. But like I said, the part about association is also important. So who you're associated with, how can you work with other brands to make your brand shine, or each other's brand shine. I think that's important. So increasingly, you guys probably saw a lot of collaboration on social media where certain people, maybe consultants or companies working with influencers and stuff like that. Why do they work with influencers? First and foremost, I would say once again the association, right? Influencers have positive image or reputation in certain space that this individual collaborating or corroborating with them has actually, they want that kind of positioning so that that collaboration actually works. That's the first thing. Second thing is then typically when it comes to influencers, there's certain outreach that they have, right? So the beauty of social media in particular, or even networking in particular in person, is that there's only so many people you can reach out to. But imagine if you can tap on a network of somebody else who's at least as influential or even more influential. I think that's where's the beauty of collaboration itself, where you reach out to more people. So I think from a strategic point of view is then associating with positive people in that space itself to kind of showcase, hey, I may not know Sam, but it seems like Sam is associated with so many HR leaders in the market and they're saying good things about him. I mean, from a social media point of view, it's called social proof, right? Once you have the social proof, people naturally trust you more, right? So I mean, just case in point, why would people engage me to do keynotes, to do consulting for multinationals like Hotline introduced just now? That social proof actually played a lot of difference. Hanging out with HR leaders, having the endorsements from them, for example, shows that at least I'm credible to some extent, right? It's not like some fly by night Tom, Dick, Harry that I appear to say I can do this, and I can't actually deliver. People may not trust, but instead, if people out there are constantly saying, endorsing Sam, that hey, Sam can do this, Sam did this for me, I'm happy with Sam, it speaks volume of that person because it's not from me, it's from somebody else. So I think that collaboration, not only from outreach point of view, but that trust, that credibility, and association point of view, once again, is very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, networking is tremendously strong. I mean, I experience it, and I seen you experience it as well, because one of the reasons why people actually ask you to do global keynote speeches, they invite you for panels outside of Singapore, around Asia, even globally, right? Is because they see the good work that you're doing and how you're connecting the dots around the region. And you have a niche, right, Sam, about staying within the focus area of millennials and building brands. So it's a great focus because people know that that's your space. And when anybody talks about millennials, they always have top of the mind Sam Neo. I see it. I see it on a basis where people ask me these things, and Sam, this, and they always talk about this when they talk millennials. So it's great. The one I wanted to so now it comes on to what do you call? So you do a lot of stuff, right? So I met several people that I wanted to find out more about how SEO works. Optimizing of social reach, right? And they said, and some of these guys, right, they actually say, if you want to talk to anybody who's an expert, right, who understands what branding is, right, you talk to Sam. These were guys out there who were doing marketing, who were doing social media engagements, who were trying to create a marketing publicity and a big feel out there, right? So it was interesting. So the question I wanted to ask is, how do you know that you're doing a good job around your personal branding? How do you know that? How when somebody does personal branding, they don't have. How do you actually feel that you're doing it right, Sam? Could you help us understand that a little bit more?
I think actually in your sharing just now, you kind of brought out a few important points that kind of answers this to some extent as well.
Yeah.
So I think first and foremost, people associate you with something or a few core areas, right? So I mean, in the past, I was purely doing the millennials because the market saw me as a millennial guy talking about HR, so millennial HR. But I was aware that, when it comes to millennial, it's like a fad, right? Gen Z is coming up, there might be new generation, which is why I started Stories of Asia. I started focusing more employer branding, for instance. So you see, the brand can shift a little bit, but you need to know the core of what you stand for. So people still see me as the passionate HR guy that's driving HR in different ways. I think that's how I usually see it for a start itself. So back to Lawrence's point, I think first and foremost, people associate you with something. I think that's important and consistently so. So it's not like, oh, I think Sam is the HR guy, or Sam is the marketing guy, Sam is the branding guy. If there are too many things in the market, right, it creates brand confusion actually. Right, so the first and foremost when it comes to branding, I think like I said at the start, you need to identify what you really stand for and what's the core first. While you can do many things, having like one or two core areas is important to open the door first. Because when I first started out my journey, I just want to do like HR, generic HR, because I had interest in many areas and I feel that I can do a lot of things. But then when I was talking with other consultant friends or mentors in that sense, they brought up a very important point that, hey, you may be known for many things, people may like you, but if you're not known for something, if there's a problem that comes up at the top of my mind, I probably won't come to you, right? Because you don't seem like the expert or the specialist in the space.
Yep,
So that's
right.
something that I think is first and foremost, you want to be known as an expert and especially in something. And Lawrence brought up a very interesting point. He said, a few people in the space thinks I'm an expert. But if you look at my social media, right, or when I do my speeches, I've never once claimed to be an expert in anything, to be honest. So because I never believe in self-proclaiming being an expert, but once you do a good work, once you build a strong enough brand, what happens is that the market will see you as an expert in something or thought leader or whatever it is. So I think usually what I believe in is that you do your good work, you shout out in a certain way by adding value, and it's not just showing off or showcasing. Naturally, you gravitate people towards you, like-minded people, and people will see you as an expert and associate you in that space. I think that's one key area when you talk about, a strong personal brand. And the other part, of course, personal brand, like I said, there's a positive and negative side to it. So are people constantly saying good things about you? Do people have trust that you can deliver your stuff? Do people confidently dare to refer you for an assignment to a job, for example? Or it's like, okay, let's say I'm close to Lawrence, but I won't dare to refer Lawrence to a job, for example, because I know he's like up to no good behind the scenes, right? So these are things that, it's a brand. You want people to have confidence in you so that, it shows that it's positive. I think that's very important as well, which is why I think we spoke quite a bit about it's not just the hardware or the online part, but the offline part, how you carry yourself, how you treat people makes a lot of difference. And that's a joke, huh? Lawrence is not like that.
Well, I'm very upset now, man. I am absolutely upset about that. No, I'm just kidding. I do understand what you're saying. And
Yeah.
I believe it's true as well, because you just do not recommend people to places where you don't think they'll fit anyway. You're actually protecting me as well as you're protecting your client as well. So that's good.
It's
That's
also
about
protecting
personal
your brand
branding.
as well, isn't it, Lawrence? Because you see,
Yeah, yeah, it is.
it
It
takes
really
a
is.
lot of effort to grow a personal brand, but it's so
That's
easy
right.
to destroy it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to just throw some questions, because there's
Yep.
a lot of questions coming in now,
Mm.
and I just might I like to be able to give you a couple, because it's actually very relevant to what you're talking about. Now the question is from somebody. If I believe someone's perception of my brand is very wrong, how
Mm.
can I correct it?
Mm. That's a question, right? How can you correct that
Yes.
misperception of sort? I think first and foremost, you need to look inward, because very often what happens is this, right? We may have certain position in mind, we may have certain intentions, but why do people interpret it in a different way? Right? So for example, I may be a very giving person, but often people see me as a very stuck-up person or someone who's very aloof, right? So I then want to question myself to get some self-awareness, or speak with mentors for that matter, right? To understand, am I portraying myself or sending a wrong message in the market? Because very often personal branding is about messaging. What is the message that I'm sending, and how am I building that message up towards the brand across different touch points that we kept emphasizing? So perhaps, right, if people are saying that, hey, you are like this and that is not aligned to your brand, perhaps you want to, try to find out more, get a very open feedback, be humble about it to understand why so, right? I think that's actually a very good touch point to build on, because a strong brand, first and foremost, is consistent. Second thing is robust as well. It stands the test of time and across different criticism. So a good brand, I mean, just to add on to Lawrence's question and to this question itself, is that, someone may criticize you, may badmouth you because, let's say, it's a competitor or someone who doesn't like you. But if your brand is strong, you will see 10 other people stepping up to say, I don't agree. Lawrence is actually okay, Sam is actually okay, Sam is like that, Lawrence like that. So that's what you want to build towards. You want to build that fan base, that followership, that strong brand that, regardless of what some naysayers may say, which you have definitely as you get more popular or more successful, right? You have people backing you up. I think that's what's really important itself. Yeah.
No, that's a great answer. I think that's very, very, very correct, right? So somebody asked a big personal question, right? I think you answered it earlier on, but I like to just throw this out to you as
Yep.
well. What is your niche,
My
Sam?
niche.
Yeah.
My niche is, it still goes back to developing the people first mindset. I think why is my company called People Mentality? I think the core has always been about instilling the people first mindset. So I think many people might see me over the past 3 years or so, right, doing a lot of things. I started from a generic HR consulting. I started talking about millennials. I do employer branding, personal branding. Now I created a storytelling platform. It seems like a lot of things. But if you look at the core of it, it goes back to that people centricness. It goes back to the belief that, you know, people is the most, one of the most important, if not the most important organization. And people first mindset is something that I'm constantly instilling, regardless of which platform,
Mm.
regardless of channel, regardless of what I do. And because of the fact that I want to show HR people that, you know, HR can be done in so many different ways. It can be through a fireside chat, it can be through content creation, it could be, let's say, through consulting, it can be through storytelling, can be many things. But at the end of the day, that people first mindset is important, is the core of what I'm constantly advocating. So that's pretty core to me, actually.
Okay. Some nice, very interesting questions here. I like it. So I'm going to ask you some more, right?
I can choose not to answer, right? I
No,
see your cheeky
they're
smile,
actually
so I get a
very
bit
good.
worried sometimes.
There's some very good questions here.
Mm, mm, mm.
How do you start creating a personal brand that is authentic? So maybe maybe you can answer that, because or maybe you want to ask for clarification around that.
I can share my perspective on that first.
Okay,
Maybe
okay.
Lawrence can chime in as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So for me, authenticity in the simplest form, right, is that whatever people see online and offline, or when they know you as an individual person or as a professional, it's pretty much consistent, pretty much the same. Of course, there's some variation itself, but pretty much gels together. I think that's authenticity to me, at least, right? So I think what's important is that when you present yourself online or at a professional level, right, you don't want to overpromise. I think that's where some people try to, I mean, in a way, fake it before you make it. I understand the concept,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Fake
you
it
don't
till you make it.
precisely, right? But you don't want to over fake it in a way where you can't live up to the expectation. You know, I think that's one big challenge when it comes to personal branding, where people want to say, hey, I'm the best consultant in the market, I'm the best manager and stuff like that. But when it comes to actual execution, when it comes to, you know, dealing people in person, you can't live up to the expectation. So I think when it comes to authenticity, know first and foremost what your strengths are, play to your strengths, know where your limits are at this moment, and then position yourself, brand yourself in that manner rather than over promising, overselling. I think that's one of the easiest way to build an authentic brand, and along the way build up. You know, I think that's where brand building is a journey. It's not a one-off thing where it cannot change. You know, brand can change, but at the end of the day, you need to ask yourself what's the core that you really truly believe in. Like myself, like I said, the people first mindset, the people mentality itself. That's what you want to think of when it comes to building authentic brand. How about Lawrence? I mean, what are your thoughts around this?
It's personally, I think this is very, very important point, being authentic, not just in in the way you answer things on say, for example, in a Facebook page or on LinkedIn, how you actually project yourself. But when somebody meets you, you got to be projecting almost an identical duplicate of what you are seen as in LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever it
Yep.
is, right?
Yep.
Even on a phone call, because perception is like that. If those two don't come together, it destroys your branding completely. And it's easy enough. It's like trust. Once your branding is destroyed, right, it's very difficult to build it back up again. So
Yep.
same with trust. Once trust is destroyed, right, it's very, very difficult. You come from a very, very difficult place. So being authentic, right? That's why I like the question, because it's one of the true product of what branding is about,
Mm.
being authentic. So it's so important that I thank you for that question. It's really very good, that question. If you take nothing away, just remember, be authentic. Whether you're on the page or you're off the page, you're in facing somebody, be authentic.
Maybe if I can add on to this point, I think just came to
Yeah.
my mind, right? When it
Mm.
comes to authentic brand building, what we have seen in recent times is that people equate vulnerability to authenticity. So meaning, right, a lot of people started sharing their failure stories, you know, how they got abused or how they screwed up the client's work and stuff like that to show that they're authentic, right? Okay, so I'd like to clarify that part because I think it's very important for our audience to understand this as well. So the point of authenticity, right, like I said, is being real, right? But when opening up in terms of vulnerability itself, there is also a limit. You know, why do I say that? So in the past, right, I used to be just a very naive guy when I first started out, you know, very just opening up every single thing. Oh, today I did a free workshop. You know, I finally got paid my first assignment, $200. I was really happy about it. So one of my mentors texted me. He said, "Hey Sam, if you keep telling people that you are doing free workshops, right, who the hell will pay you for anything? And if you keep telling people this is your market rate, how do you mark up later on, for example?" So my point is this, right? It's good to be vulnerable, to share, open up a little bit, but of course we need to understand individual appetite, right? Not everybody can share everything. And there's no need to share every single thing about yourself, because while you talk about personal brand, be mindful of the people around you as well. So for example, when I share about my family, my kid, typically it's just a photo, you know, a simple journey that we've gone through. I don't share too personal stuff because I'm mindful of the privacy of my family as well, and I don't want people to know too much in some space. So there's different levels of sharing, I feel. And being vulnerable as well, when you share, you want to be authentic. It's also important to understand what's the impression or image you're trying to create, right? Because when people think of you, okay, while they may engage your post, for example, that vanity matrix may set in, right? That, hey, I like Sam because he shares a lot of interesting stories. But will I engage Sam or will I employ Sam? That's a different question altogether. So
Yeah.
while opening up, while being authentic, we also need to be mindful of what's the image that we're portraying, and not just going all out, because you know it may be counterproductive, it may be harmful to your brand, in fact. Yeah. So this is something that I hope we pay attention to, because very, very important actually.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, you know, Melpay asked a question here.
Hmm.
Uh, Melpay, I think. If you are an employee with a side business,
Hmm.
how do you develop a personal brand that works? That is, LinkedIn, for instance, only allow one account, one brand.
So to this point, okay, so what happened was back then, right? I registered my business, the consulting business, when I was still in Changi Airport Group, right? Even though I didn't do any actual business itself, I started the branding journey already. So the question to Melpay is then, for your side business, right? Okay, I mean, you don't have to share what you're doing or whatever it is, but if it's something really different, but what are you passionate about? You know, what is the message behind that you want people to associate you with, for example? So maybe, for example, I was in corporate HR, but now I'm going into, let's say, F&B. So I could start building a brand around me being a food enthusiast, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be work related. It can be a side hobby, a side passion. But most importantly, when people think of you, you want them to associate you with something that leads to what you're trying to do. So in that case, for example, let's say I'm trying to set up F&B business. I want to constantly share about my reflections about, you know, what a good food is, or where have I went. And of course, in a very savvy manner, you can easily tie back to your professional life. So for example, as a HR professional, I could often share, for example, what does a good dish teach me about being a good HR leader, for example. You know, there's a lot of analogy that can be cross-pollinated, that you can use in a subtle way to create in people's mind that, hey, I'm known for something. So that's where I think can be done if you just find that linkage somewhere and be savvy about around it. Basically, I think hopefully that answers Melpay's question.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah. So I just have one more question before we go on to the back to where we want to talk about, and after that we come back to the other questions as well, because
Sure.
there's now piling up
Yep.
quite a lot of questions coming, which is great, right? I
Yep.
love it when people are. So this one is, what's your advice for people whose research leans towards left wing, blue sky, to brand themselves in a traditionally conservative ecosystem like in Singapore?
What does left wing blue sky actually mean?
I can't tell you. I don't. The person's anonymous. So
Okay. Okay.
left wing blue sky. I'm also not sure. Left wing.
Sounds like government sector or something. I'm guessing. Okay. Okay, I'm just guessing,
Blue
given
sky.
your
I
background.
suppose it is. Um,
Okay,
I
so
don't
in a
know.
traditional environment, is it? How can you still build a personal
Yeah.
brand?
With whoever asked that question, maybe you unmute your audio and just sort of clarify for Sam, please. Left wing blue sky.
I saw somebody
Okay,
raising their hand.
Jun Kwan, is it? Jun Kwan, could you sort of unmute and then just ask that left wing blue sky. I love to understand what you mean.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Left wing is the liberal, socialist, or radical section of a political party or system.
Okay. Okay.
The
Okay.
left side of a team on a field in soccer, rugby, and field hockey, his usual position on the left wing. Oh, they're talking about left wing, that means that side. They can't unmute, sorry. So it's Apana Saxena. Left wing is liberal, socialist, or radical.
Okay.
And the left side is the left side of a team playing on a soccer rugby field.
Okay.
Okay,
So
left wing is cross-disciplinary transdisciplinary research. Wow, very chim that one.
yeah,
This
that's
guys
a
look
bit
like
cheap, huh?
scientists, this guys.
Okay. So I
Jun
see a few
Kwan,
things there. I see
Jun
political
Kwan.
stuff. I see sports. I see research. And of course, I think
Yeah.
the end of question is like in a traditional organization, right? How do you build a
Okay,
brand?
let's go simple then.
Okay, okay. So
Let's
I
go
think
simple.
considering all together in a very traditional
Yeah,
setting itself, how do you build a personal brand? I
yeah.
think there are a few ways. Of course, in a traditional setting, social media might be more challenging, right? Because a lot of times there's a lot of corporate comms guidelines and stuff like that, which is fair. For
That's right. Yeah.
GLCs in particular, government sector, that's a problem. So how do you build a personal brand through um, in person, right? You know, the communities that you're involved in, the people that you meet, getting people to advocate for you, for example. And these are some ways, right? So like I said, a strong personal brand is when people actually advocate for you on your behalf. So collaboration could be one. So you don't have to be the one shouting out about yourself. You know, having certain collaboration, being a guest on somebody's, let's say, podcast, you know, somebody's article, certain story could be one way. Building mentors, mentees, or a community itself where people actually say things about you in the market. That could be another way. So I think there are many ways around building a personal brand. It's not always restricted to just social media, just LinkedIn, for example. The offline part actually is at least as powerful in terms of building the emotional connection itself. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's get back to what.
Yep.
So so I'm sure a lot of us have heard about unique selling propositions, right?
Yep.
USP. It's actually a very important ingredient in a lot in personal branding, especially. So, based on your experience, right, Sam, and your own plans, right, what would you propose, right? So, for example, each of us in this audience, what would you propose, right, that we can ensure our personal branding is correct by using this USP?
I think first and foremost, when it comes to branding, whether it's personal, employer brand, company brand, I've always emphasized the importance of first looking inward because that's where you want to build, once again, the authentic brand itself. When it comes to looking inward, I think having a mentor, having a coach, or even self-reflection is quite important. Typically, what I use for a simple framework, right, is what I call VISA, V-I-S-A. So V actually stands for values. You want to know what's important to you, what you stand for, right? That's the first thing you want to consider. Second thing is then what's your interest? What gets you excited? What motivates you? You know, what keeps you going on day-to-day basis? S is strength. You know, what comes naturally to you? What are you good at doing? What do people often say that, hey, you're really good at this, for example? And finally, A is then aspiration, which is what does success actually look like to you? Is it becoming like a proud father? Is it becoming a CEO? Is it impacting lives or whatever it is, right? So having this visa gives you a bit more clarity in terms of, you know, what is so unique about you, because everyone has a different unique set of experience and different unique set of competency. So once you mix that competency and experience together, which is uniquely yours, and using this visa as a way to kind of understand, you know, what is it all about, you can usually find out something that's quite unique, something that's authentic and resonate, something that perhaps stand out amongst your peers or people in the industry. So that's usually the advice or recommendation that I say: get started with this, and then perhaps chat with more people to get more clarity in terms of, you know, what do you really stand for? Because listening to the market, listening to people is actually one of the best ways, in my opinion, after kind of researching inside yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Sam, I really want to continue this conversation, but I think we need to be mindful of the time as well.
Yep. Yep.
So what I'll do is I will dive straight back into the questions again
Sure.
because they're piling up. And there's
Okay.
some really good questions, right?
Okay.
And we have to be mindful that we need to hand over back to Hoglite so he can close off as well. So next question for you. This is
Yep.
question for Sam only.
So Lawrence must keep quiet.
Question for Sam. What are
Okay.
your down moments? How do you get yourself up again? What would you say are your drivers to your success today and going forward? So there are 4 questions effectively from this person, but
Okay.
great questions.
Okay. I'll try to
Question for
combine them
Sam. What are
together
your
as much
down
as
moments?
possible.
Yeah.
Down moments a lot actually. I mean, along my career, I think so far it's about 9 to 10 years so far. Of course, everyone has a lot of down moments, right? Where certain things that you expected didn't quite happen. For example, a client that promised so much, it seems like it's almost 90% there, but at the end of the day, things get things didn't go your way, right? Because of budget
Mm,
constraint, whatever it is. Or most recently, for example, last year, people mentality were making so much money, doing pretty well itself suddenly, and this year we're projecting to actually double double the revenue, the top line, stuff like that. But we all know COVID hit, right? So a lot of things got cut. That was really bad because what happened was, like Lauren said, my baby joined the family in February, and that's where actually there was extra financial pressure in some sense. I think it's not exactly that I don't have the financial power at this moment. It was quite okay, but the pressure is that, hey, what happened now if my business is not doing so well? So it's real, that at certain point of time, certain situations out of your control hit, like the COVID situation itself. It was a really down moment for 2 months because slowly you see certain clients bit by bit saying, oh, I can't engage you for now, I can't engage you. It's like a domino effect. It's like, you expected it to happen one way or another, but when it came in reality, you just couldn't accept it somehow, for that 1 month or 2 months itself. So that was kind of a down moment, I would say, in sometime Feb, March itself. Of course, thankfully, we kind of picked up in um, early May and April itself. And to the question, how did I have that success factor? What constantly drives me? I think that sense of purpose is very important. Constantly knowing what am I doing. It's not just that financial aspect, right? It's for families, for loved ones. It's also to drive a bigger cause beyond myself. I think the fact that I'm always thinking that it's not just about Sam, it's about building something beyond myself, actually constantly drives me and make me feel good about what I'm doing, because I get a lot of support from the market. Because it's not just about,
mm,
oh, making Sam look good, but in fact, I know Sam is on a mission that I want to be on board. It makes a difference to more people, impacts more life. I think that really helped me a lot. And what kept me going, or keeps me going constantly, like I said, family is one big part. Constantly thinking of how can I make my family proud, how can I be a role model for my son, how can I impact more lives in a community of friends that I'm working with. I think all these are, I'm not trying to sound too noble, but these are things that really help me, get through dark moments, help me recollect myself, even though, like in the current situation, we were hit very badly for the first 2 months itself. Yeah.
yeah. Sam, one of the things I got to add this one on. It's actually your support base. You actually have a very good support base. Family is a support base.
Yep.
Even mentoring, I mean, AIM as well. I mean,
Mm.
we support what you do. UNACOV, I think the fact that you're sitting down here, you're supporting us as well. So and then HRFC and
Yep.
all the things, and you freely give. So which is great, right? And how you actually spend time actually building on Stories of Asia, you're helping other companies also get attention
Yep.
through one of your organizations. So it's all very mutually beneficial. It's great, and I think it's a very good point as well. When you're down, people are there to help, and you are there to help as well.
If I
So
may
the other
add,
one
right,
is
I think
from
why, if
yeah.
I may just quickly add here, why a personal brand actually helped. I think I was really thankful, right? Lauren said, in the bad time, right, how I picked up so fast as well was because a lot of clients actually came to me. They said, hey Sam, how are you doing, man? So when I was openly like, hey, business suck lah, anything you can do with me or whatever it is, they openly ask me, what can I offer you? Is there a workshop that you can do? Can I
Mm,
engage you for this and that? They actually help because when it comes to personal brand, like I said, it's a relationship you're building and it takes time.
mm.
It's not that it doesn't reap it straight away. The benefit is not straight away. But if you build over time, when it comes to time when you need it after giving so much, naturally people want to find ways to give back to you. I mean, that's a real story actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's one from Suresh.
Yep, Suresh.
Suresh, how do you manage personal branding on different platforms? For example, LinkedIn versus Instagram,
Hmm.
since the audience spread is different in these platforms.
Yep.
Okay, and then it add on, why Insta? Because that's where more attention is perceived these days.
Okay, that's the end of
So
the question.
yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay. So I think two parts to the question, right? One is then, okay, different platforms. I think different platforms, there are different audience, or even if the audience come from the same people, expectations are different, right? So for example, LinkedIn is more like a professional platform where people love thought leadership, they love all these discussions. Instagram usually is more lifestyle. People love nice photos and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say that exactly attention is all going towards Insta, right? But rather people go to Insta for different reasons. They want to see nice photos, they want to follow certain influencers, they want to see like travel photos, for example, where people that go to LinkedIn, for instance, they're looking at professional advice, they're looking for thought leadership, they're looking for some inspiration, for example. So I wouldn't say that any platform is better than the other, but more importantly, to ask yourself, right? How are you building your brand in terms of who's your target audience, and what is in it for your audience? So I may post similar things on all platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, for example, even YouTube, right? But the spill to it, the spin to it may vary a little bit. So for example, if I'm posting on LinkedIn, I'll focus a lot on thought leadership. If on Instagram, I'll focus on something that is focusing on the content, the picture itself, making it, ensuring it's really nice, and just have a simple caption that people, it just adds on a bit of life to it, for example. Facebook could be more in terms of sharing articles, generating some conversation. YouTube could be more in terms of, step-by-step guides that people usually follow. So these different platforms actually have different expectations, and people look for different things on different platforms. Yeah.
Okay. There are about 7 more questions. So, but
I
what
can
I'll
take all
do
if
is,
you have time, no problem. Yeah. Go
no,
ahead.
no, I'm mindful of the time. We're about 4 minutes off 6 o'clock, and I'm mindful of the time that
Okay.
we have, right? And also, Hotline needs some time to actually
Sure.
do some admin closing as well. So what I want to do is, let me ask one more question from this Q&A box, and then after that, right, we'll close off and then pass it back to Hotline.
Sounds good.
Is that
Yep.
okay?
Yep. Sounds good.
My apologies to everybody. So just so you know, okay, I'm gonna ask one other question here from well, a lot of anonymous fellas. Stefan Chu. All right. Common conception. This one: PhDs are overqualified and unproductive. How can PhD graduates brand themselves and communicate their value to industry, especially since our outputs cannot be measured by traditional KPIs?
Interesting question. I think it's relatively similar. I can put it in similar context as a fresh grad, actually. So someone who's similarly overly qualified based on market perception versus someone who has supposedly no value in the market for a start, right? I think what you can consider from personal brand point of view is, what are you actually giving? Because, from regardless of how young, how old, what's your background, all of us have certain perspective, certain value that you can give, which is why I think reverse mentoring is also very powerful. So the thing is, how can you constantly share things of value, whether it's in person, social media, whatever it is, to get the attention of your viewers, your followers, for them to feel that, hey, this person is of value. It's not just a typical fresh grad, a typical PhD. That's why it changed perception, right? Because people may have stereotypes, like HR sucks, for example, right? But if as a HR professional, you can constantly give value to change perceptions through your giving, through your collaboration, through your association even, that's where it can make a lot of difference. So, I mean, association as simple as a PhD person working with, let's say, an entrepreneur, right? Making people feel that this guy is quite different, for instance. So many ways around it, but essentially it's about giving, it's about association as well.
Okay, thanks, Sam. So in closing, right, I'd like to close this session with Sam. Now, it's been wonderful sharing and loads of questions. Sam, what would be the takeaway, the 3 key takeaways that you would give to all of us, right, about personal branding from today's session? 3
Okay.
key takeaways.
Okay, let me think. 3. We spoke about a lot of things today.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, personal branding has to be authentic. I think that's something that we can't emphasize enough, both Lawrence and myself. Being consistent about it, offline, online, I think that's important, authenticity. Second thing is that you need to recognize personal branding is a journey. It's not a once-off, one-hit wonder. It's not like marketing that can be more tactical at times. So I think that's the second point I'll bring across. Third thing is then, let's see what else. Personal branding. I think the third thing that really resonates for me personally is that the power of storytelling. How you build a strong brand, how you connect with people. Typically, if you're able to tell a good story, something that's authentic, that's real, that connects with people not only at a rational, factual level, but also emotional level, that's where your brand becomes something that's really powerful. So I think these are 3 things that, hopefully, you guys can take away, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the session as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much for those the sharing, and also thank you everybody for being so kind and participative, especially with all the questions. I'd like to hand over now to Hok Lai. He's got about 30 seconds, I think. I'm sorry, Hok Lai, but I think we can spend a few more minutes just bearing with us. Hok Lai, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, and thank you,
Thank you.
Lawrence. And please remind me next time we have Sam, we have to make sure we schedule this for maybe 3 hours or 5 hours to get this going. Yes, I just need a few more minutes just to do some administrative stuff. Now, we have a couple of minutes left to tonight's webinar, so I please ask you to take the time to complete the short survey. It can be accessed by the QR code on the left. And if you're accessing this from your phone, the link will be posted in the chat feature. We really love to have your feedback, especially this new format that we are doing now on our webinar. Let us know if you like this. Let us know what else you'd like to hear about. Let us know who you'd like us to invite. And let us know what is your main takeaway. This will be a good motivation for us. If you're interested to be involved in UNACOV, as a mentor, as a mentee, or even to volunteer as a speaker, please access the relevant page on our website. The QR code is also there on the right. The link and the recording will be sent out by email in a couple of days. And please comment in the chat feature now if you have any thoughts on tonight's webinar. It's a testimonial for us. In next week's webinar, we'll hear from Henry Tan on the topic of managing career opportunity and transition during the COVID-19. And please look out for our future webinar on the website, email, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We are also trying to build our brand. I want to once again thank Sam and Lawrence, and also to Laura, who has been working in backstage to make all this smooth. It's normally not so smooth. Thank you, Laura. And to our fellow UNACOV volunteers, to our UNACOV partners, without which all this would not have been possible, as well as all of you for being patient, attending, and very nicely, nobody dropped off until the end. And thank you and have a good evening. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye. Thank you, Sam.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.